Chapter 1060. Under Mayo's curious gaze, Wyrm and Angelica entered a certain room and came out after about half an hour. However, they weren't doing anything indescribable. Wyrm simply wanted to have a chat with Angelica about whether she should continue staying here. Firstly, Julian had a lot of things to do back then. Angelica was staying in the Shuayu residence, so it was easier for Julian to have one less person. Secondly, Angelica thought that she had been abandoned and was picked up by Wyrm, who didn't kill her. Thereafter, she acknowledged Wyrm as her master. Thirdly, even though Wyrm didn't realize this problem due to Mayo's excessive independence, Angelica had indeed taken on the role of Wyrm's nanny when Mayu wasn't around. These were the three reasons why Wyrm wanted Angelica to stay. But now that Wyrm was back and Julian was almost done with his preparations, Angelica could return. Wyrm knew that Julian still had feelings for his elder sister. Wyrm wouldn't forcefully separate the siblings. Perhaps after Angelica returned, Julian could instill feelings and memories into her, allowing the emotionless Angelica to truly revive as Julian's elder sister. Although reviving the dead was a taboo in any world and it wasn't a true revival, Wyrm didn't mind. However, it was still up to Julian and Angelica to decide on their own. Even though Angelica lacked emotions, she wasn't a complete puppet. In the end, Angelica made a decision. "I want to go back and take a look." Wyrm and Mayu bid farewell to Angelica, who returned to Mayo's world. "Mayu, go do your homework. I'll prepare dinner for you." "Okay." Mayu nodded lightly and walked into her room. Wyrm also walked to the kitchen and began his simple but realistic dinner life. Then, Wyrm saw Maeve, who was wrapped in a towel, walking out of the bathroom. Maeve? Wyrm hurriedly lowered his voice, afraid that Mayu would hear him. Wyrm didn't want to see the scene of Mayu pointing at Mai Fu with a face full of resentment and asking Wyrm who this woman is. "But, my dear, you didn't let me go," Maeve smiled charmingly. Since she didn't let her go, Maeve volunteered to stay. As for why Angelica didn't stop Maeve, it was because Angelica knew about the relationship between Wyrm and Maeve. Angelica even knew about the existence of Artoria, Joan of Arc, Skaha, and Tiamat. It couldn't be helped. Because of ignoring Angelica, Wyrm basically didn't hide anything from Angelica. And because of her lack of emotions, Angelica didn't deliberately avoid Wyrm because her thoughts were different from ordinary people. Therefore, Angelica could be said to be the person who understood Wyrm the most right now. "My queen, please don't play with me." Wyrm hurriedly opened the portal and signaled Maeve to leave quickly. "Give me double tonight and I'll leave," Maeve said arrogantly. Okay. I'll promise you anything." Wyrm pushed Maeve into the portal. Then, Wyrm let out a long sigh. It seems that the first thing that needs to be dealt with is the issue of Mayu and Maeve meeting. After all, it's not a solution to keep hiding it. "Brother Wyrm, did I just hear a woman's voice?" Mayu suddenly walked out from the corner. "It's nothing. I was just talking to Kalis, who is practicing voice changing on what ingredients to use tonight." In an instant, Kalis, who was beside Wyrm, became the scapegoat. Yes. What else could Kalis say? She could only help Wyrm cover it up. "Just do as usual," Mayu said softly and didn't want to disturb Wyrm anymore and returned to her room. Wyrm let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Shuayu's house was big enough. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome. However, what Wyrm didn't know was what kind of disaster he was going to face tonight. It was the next morning in the timeline. In the mansion that Wyrm bought for Artoria, Jean, and Maeve, Wyrm walked out of Maeve's room with a pained expression and met the adult version of Artoria. Because of the restraints, Artoria has all the memories of the Middle East singularity, so sometimes Artoria can't help but transform into her adult form. That's why Wyrm said that Artoria and Jean's breasts were, sometimes, different. However, Artoria's transformation from time to time brought double the joy to Wyrm. "Are you okay?" Artoria's face was serious, but her tone was full of concern. "I'm okay." However, Wuming's slightly pale face betrayed Wuming. You can't spoil Maeve all the time. Artoria began to educate Wuming. Although Artoria and Jean also had sex with Wuming, they were not the kind of people who would get addicted to it. They would only do it with Wuming when they were deeply in love, but they were usually like an old married couple. However, Maeve was different. Maeve was born with a perfect body like that of a goddess. It could be said that she was born with the ability to seduce men. And Maeve also acted according to the desire brought by this ability. Otherwise, Maeve's amorous behavior wouldn't be recorded in the historical stories. In addition, the Maeve that Wuming knew had always been pure. After having sex with Wuming, it was as if the desire that had been suppressed for a lifetime had been released. That was why she kept pestering Wuming. This time, it was quite impressive. Artoria didn't think that doing such things was evil, but there were limits. Just like last night, Maeve's screams were so loud that she and Jean couldn't sleep well. Fortunately, when they were brought to Wuming's side by the restraining force, their bodies were still at the level of heroic spirits. Otherwise, the dark circles under their eyes would be hanging on their faces. I know. I'll be careful in the future. It was impossible for Wuming not to be careful. If they did it every day, even Wuming wouldn't be able to take it. It was just like when the dust of a dead world entered the root. If the root's power couldn't supply it, the root would be burdened and forced to supply it. Over time, problems would arise. Knowing this, Wuming wouldn't let Maeve do as she pleased anymore. However, indulging like this from time to time was indeed very satisfying. Isn't Jean with you? Wuming asked Artoria about Jean. She went to buy some supplements for you, Artoria replied calmly. Although Wuming didn't need them, as expected, compared to Artoria and Maeve, Jean was more suitable to be a wife. After all, she was a village girl. By the way, when do you plan to bring Guinevere over? Artoria's question surprised Wuming. Then, Wuming coughed and straightened his face. I still have to send Mayu to school. Let's call it a day. I don't need any supplements. After that, Wuming ran away as if he was escaping. Artoria shook her head helplessly. She knew that Wuming was hiding something, but more than that, it was because Wuming found it hard to accept Artoria and Guinevere's identities. After all, the three of them were a twisted love triangle. Although it was pretentious, Artoria believed that Wuming would arrange everything in the end. Now, he just needed some time. Chapter 1061. Artoria was right. Wuming really needed time right now. When he thought about how many things he had to deal with, Wuming would rather fight another 300 rounds with Gydia. But that was all talk. He couldn't run away from what he had to face. After sending Mayu to school, Wuming and Kalis arrived at the root of everything. The golden portal closed, and Wuming and Kalis, who had just exited the portal, were now standing on the platform of the root of everything. The original portal was purplish-black, but it was still too dark, so Wuming modified it in the root of everything. Not only did it change the color, but its ability was also greatly enhanced. Otherwise, Wuming wouldn't have been able to use the portal to directly travel from Mayo's world to the root of everything. At the center of the platform where Kalis and Wuming stood, Wuming's backup machine had already disappeared. Without a doubt, the backup machine had gone to save the world. Wuming waved his hand, and several high-tech screens appeared in front of Wuming and Kalis. This was the result of Wuming using the authority of the root of everything. Wuming could directly see the scenes of other worlds, be it the past or the present. What was displayed on the screens was the live broadcast and recording of the backup machine saving the world. On the screens, various worlds were on the verge of destruction. In the next second, a giant white dragon descended from the sky, instantly found the source of the destruction, and stopped it. The survivors of those worlds were all deeply grateful to the giant white dragon. Although there were very few of them, there were still some who held resentment and hatred towards the white dragon for saving the world. Without a doubt, those people were not the masterminds behind the destruction of the world, but they probably had something to do with it. After that, The white dragon automatically retrieved information about that world, understood the cause, and used the root of everything to destroy those who were truly responsible for the destruction of the world and refused to change their ways. Even if they had abilities like substitutes or resurrections, they were useless in front of the root of everything. Wuming's backup machine tirelessly went to each world that was about to be destroyed one after another to save them. Looks like the backup machine can also take on my mission. However, there were worlds that had been saved, and there were also worlds that had not been saved. Wuming waved his hand again, and the screens in front of him changed instantly. The next thing that appeared on the screen was no longer a white dragon. Not only that, but the worlds on the screen were also on the verge of collapsing. A few seconds later, they completely shattered. Be it people or objects, they were all annihilated. As for the world itself, it would turn into an invisible speck of dust that wandered between worlds, eventually being sucked into the origin and becoming a speck of origin black soil. That's not a good idea. Wuming frowned. It was clear that while the origin dragon could quickly save worlds, there were many worlds that could not wait for that world to arrive. After all, there was no telling how many times the origin had reincarnated, how big the world was, or how many worlds there were. Coupled with the fact that the world was being destroyed faster and faster, Wuming's backup machine alone would not be able to save them in time. In order for Wuming's plan to become God to proceed, he had to ensure that the world would not be destroyed again. Otherwise, they would be like a pool of water that was being filled with water at the same time. Wuming raised his hand and began to connect with the origin. An invisible thread connected to Wuming's body. Wuming wanted to temporarily stop the origin's abilities to create worlds, recycle dust, and produce origin power. Wuming wanted the origin to control the time of all worlds. Controlling a few dozen, or even a few hundred worlds could be done easily by borrowing the origin's power. However, if he wanted to control the time of all worlds that were about to be destroyed, the origin would need to stop everything else and fully focus on this aspect. By temporarily stopping or slowing down the flow of time of the worlds that were about to be destroyed, there would be enough time to save those worlds. However, there was no telling when Wuming's backup machine alone would be able to save all the worlds that were about to be destroyed. As for having Wuming save all the worlds that were about to be destroyed while their time was being controlled, that was even more impossible. After all, Wuming still had to accompany Meiyu, and there were a lot of things that he needed to take care of, so how could he save so many worlds that were about to be destroyed at once? And so, Wuming made a decision. I need to find someone to help. As for who to find, it was naturally the people that Wuming was familiar with in the worlds that he had experienced. However, they all had their own lives, and not many of them would be able to fully devote themselves to saving a world. And so, Wuming made another decision. He wanted to create a system. That's right, a system that gave the host a mission. He did as he said. And so, Wuming used the power of the prime origin to create the system. Because it was a drop in the ocean compared to the time needed to control all the worlds, creating this system did not burden the prime origin much. Similarly, it did not take much time and was quickly completed. Wuming held a ball of light that was emitting a faint white light in one hand with a satisfied look on his face. By the way, because it was a system, it did not have a fixed shape or size, and what Wuming was holding was the concept of a system. Wuming had set up a mission cycle in the system, which would issue missions at fixed times, and the missions were naturally to save the world. According to the difficulty and degree of destruction of each world, the missions would be categorized into different types, and those who fit the criteria would be given the corresponding missions. Because this system was connected to the prime origin would personally select the worlds and issue missions, so there was no need to worry about any issues. Normally, when a mission was issued, the default option would be accept the mission, but there were also options to postpone the mission or reject the mission. After all, the real reason why Wuming had set up this system was to allow Wuming's acquaintances to save the world without affecting their own lives. Completing a mission would grant a required reward, and the reward could be selected by the host. For example, a reward that would increase one's personal strength, or a reward that would strengthen one's group. And these rewards would be directly replicated by the prime origin from each world where such rewards existed, so there was no need to worry about affecting other worlds. Moreover, because it was for acquaintances, there would be no failure penalty even if the reject the mission was chosen, and the rejected mission would not be delayed but transferred to someone else. However, if the postpone the mission option was chosen, the reward would definitely be reduced. Postpone the mission meant that the host would temporarily accept the mission and not do it immediately. And if the host did not accept the mission but did not do it immediately, the reward would naturally be reduced. Of course, if there was enough time, the host could also request the system to accept more missions. In any case, this was a rather good system from all aspects. Master, do you want to give it a name? Collis suggested. A name. After thinking for a second or two, Wyrm gave an answer. Just call it system. Chapter 1062. Collis didn't say anything about this. After all, she already knew that her master was terrible at naming things. She was just looking forward to it. Now, let the Great Origin send this system to a designated existence. Then, with that existence as the unit, it can be spread to the surroundings. The system was a concept. Therefore, Wyrm would split it into several parts and send it to a certain existence in the world that Wyrm had experienced. Then, that existence would spread it to other people designated by Wyrm. Wyrm lightly tossed the system in his hand, and the ball of light instantly disappeared. The system had been sent by the Great Origin to a designated person in the world designated by Wyrm. In Mayo's world, Artoria, Jean, and Maeve all received the system. Immediately, the three of them gathered together. My dear needs me. Of course, I'll help him. Maeve smiled sweetly. She didn't want to be treated like a vase by Wyrm. Fortunately, Wyrm didn't do that. He still chose to let her help. This isn't just helping Wyrm. It's also saving other worlds. Artoria was King Arthur, after all. She had a strong sense of justice. I'll help as much as I can. Although Jean didn't have much confidence, when it came to saving other worlds, she would definitely not hesitate, just like Artoria. After all, this was indeed helping Wyrm. Although Enkidu also received the system, her main task was to look after Tiamat. As for Mayu, Ilya, and the others, although they weren't weak, Wyrm didn't give them the system. Elementary school students should just obediently go to school. Great Underground Tomb of Nazalik. In the office, the Guardian Supervisor Yair Bades sat on the high-class sofa that belonged to Wyrm's office. He had a serious expression as he went through documents. That is, if you ignore the fact that Yair Bades was constantly moving against the sofa, if Demiurgos were here, he would definitely ask Yair Bade what he was doing. Then, Yair Bade would reply with an infatuated look on his face that he was trying to taint Wyrm's aura. Right at this moment, Yair Bade froze as if he had just received something. Knock knock, there was a knock on the door, and Demiurgos walked in. Seeing the stunned Yair Bade, Demiurgos was puzzled. Demiurgos walked to the desk and put down the document in his hand. What's wrong, Yair Bade? Yair Bade, who had regained his senses after hearing Demiurgos' words, had a serious expression on his face. Sir Wyrm sent a message. When it came to Wyrm, Demiurgos became serious. Demiurgos, Lord Wyrm is going to become a god in another world. I see, so that's why Lord Wyrm left this world. Then, we will naturally get what Lord Wyrm wants. Both Yair Bade and Demiurgos had a joyful expression. As expected of the Supreme Honorable, even his goal was so great. The two began to imagine, according to the Supreme Honorable's decree, we need to implant the system that Lord Wyrm passed to me into everyone in the great underground tomb of Nazalik to help Lord Wyrm save the worlds that are about to be destroyed. After all, if those worlds are destroyed, Lord Wyrm's goal will not be achieved. Hearing this, Demiurgos pushed up his glasses. Indeed, and we can even win people's hearts through rescue. As expected of Lord Wyrm. Neither of them cared about why other worlds were involved. After all, they had come to another world in the great underground tomb of Nazalik. There was nothing wrong with Wuming going to another world. Then, Yayr stretched out her hand, and a ball of light appeared in her hand. You can implant this system through contact. Lord Wuming has already put the specific method of use in the system. Arrange it as soon as possible. As she spoke, Yayr touched Demiyugos with the ball of light. In the next second, Demiyugos had a thought, and the same ball of light appeared in his hand. So that's how it is. As expected of Lord Wuming, to be able to create such a powerful tool. Then, Demiyugos bowed slightly. Then, I'll take my leave. I'll get everyone in the great underground tomb of Nazalik to implant it as soon as possible. Demiyugos left the room, leaving Yayr alone in the room with a look of excitement. Lord Wuming, I will definitely make you a god in another world. The same thing happened in another world. In the world of the god slayers, Athena, Lancelot, and Guinevere, who were living on a small island in the Pacific Ocean, received the system at the same time. My lord. Lancelot, who was dressed like an older sister, looked very excited. It's Lord Villo. Guinevere, who looked like a young girl, was even more excited. Interesting. Athena, on the other hand, seemed to be very interested in this system. My lord needs us. Lancelot immediately dressed up, as if he was about to go save the world. Wait. Wait, uncle, don't be in such a hurry, Guinevere quickly said. Lancelot was confused. With just the three of us, I'm afraid we can't help much. This system has a spreading function, and there's also a list of people who can be trusted. Why don't we leave one person to spread the word? Athena instantly understood Guinevere's meaning. That's right, I think so too. This way, we can help Lord Villo more efficiently. If that's the case, let my beloved daughter stay. With my lord's deterrence, even without me, no one would dare to attack you, Lancelot suggested. Huh. That's right. Even if you become his subordinate god, you won't have much combat power. At most, you can protect yourself. If that's the case, you should stay. Then, Lancelot and Athena instantly disappeared. They accepted the system's mission and went to save the other worlds. Guinevere, who was left alone, was in a state of sorrow. Why did this happen? I wanted to see if I could see Lord Villo. In the game world, in the human kingdom of Elgia, the residence of the queen. Rick, who had installed a mechanical arm on the broken arm, hurriedly ran in from outside. Rick had matured a lot, but he was not as haggard as before. Chloe, I have news of Lord Villo. Rick's sister, Chloe, who was not dressed very elegantly, walked out in surprise. Compared to the cheerful and lively Chloe before, Chloe was now more dignified. However, Chloe did not change when it came to her brother. The god who disguised himself as a human to help you. Didn't you say he went to the other worlds? After Wuming left, Rick did not hide it and told his sister about Wuming's identity, who was the current queen of the human kingdom. After Teto became the only god, Chloe, with the support of Rick and many other humans, established the human kingdom of Elgia and became the queen. Teto repaired the World Cup, so the living conditions of the humans were not bad. More and more humans from small tribes joined Elgia, and Elgia became more and more prosperous. Let's not talk so much. Take a look at this first. Rick instantly held Chloe's hand. Chloe was stunned as if she was electrocuted. This system is very suitable for the development of us humans. After understanding the system that had been transferred from Rick to Crony expressed her thoughts. I think so too, but I'm still considering whether to give this to other races. Although the world was at peace, the conflicts between the various races could not be resolved so easily. The races that needed to cooperate were willing to put aside their hatred, but the forest elves and goblins were still enemies, not to mention the other races. Let's do it secretly in our country first. Our only god is Teto, after all. If we spread the outer god's things, I'm afraid the only god will be unhappy. Chloe, who had been the queen for a while, immediately made a decision. Of course, the system has stated that we can spread it directly to the Jikai race. I'll leave this task to you, Rick. Remember to explain it to Zio properly. I know, I'll contact the Jikai race. Rick looked helpless. Then, Chloe showed a pained expression. As the ambassador, you're the only one who has good contact with the Jikai race. However, the Jikai race did have some problems with their brains recently, so you should be careful. Although Rick had given up the throne to his sister, he had become a diplomat of the kingdom. Rick had always been working hard for the country. Moreover, Rick's mechanical arm was obtained through diplomatic contact with the Jikai race. Due to Zio, the Jikai race was gradually awakening their individual emotions, but machines were still machines, and no one could guarantee when they would have problems. The Jikai race has already unilaterally submitted to the Villo, just like the Skywing race. I believe that if it's something from the Villo, they would definitely accept it. Rick looked confident. If that's the case, let's contact the Skywing race at the same time. A child's voice rang out in the hall where only Chloe and Rick were present. The only god. Tedo. When did you get here? Both Chloe and Rick instantly knew who the owner of the voice was. It was the god of games, Tut. As for why Rick acted like he was familiar with Tedo and even dared to be so impudent, it was because Tedo would come looking for Rick to play that unfinished game of chess, and the game was still ongoing. Moreover, Tedo was born from Rick's thoughts, and the two of them could be considered close friends, which was why Rick was so casual. I'm a Villo after all, so I'll allow him to interfere with this world as much as possible. Just do it. If Wuming hadn't given the Celestial Cup to Tedo, Tedo wouldn't have become the only god. In a sense, Wuming could be considered the father of this world's only god. After Tedo's voice disappeared, Chloe and Rick looked at each other and nodded. They then split up and began to spread the system. Above the clouds of the kingdom of Elgia, Tedo was holding a white ball of light with a smile on his face. The system only gave it to the humans. Looks like you want the Skywing and Jikai races to ally with the humans. As expected of you. In the next second, Tedo, who had loaded the system, disappeared. Such a fun game, system, naturally had to be tried out by him, the only god. Chapter 1063. Let's go back, Matthew. Gadotsi looked particularly worried. It's okay, Senpai. My body was originally used for experiments. I'm already very satisfied to be able to live until now, meet Senpai, and experience so much. Before Matthew finished speaking, he fell into a coma. Matthew. Gadotsi didn't know where she got the strength from, but she directly carried Matthew and ran back to Chaldea. The next second after Gadotsi and Matthew's figures disappeared, a golden ripple appeared, and Wuming walked out of the portal. Looking at the two people in the distance, Wuming was quite glad. He was glad that he came in person this time. Casey Paruk. Wuming whispered softly, and a snow-white squirrel-like animal came out of the snow. It was Fufu. In fact, during this period, Fufu had been following Matthew, but Matthew couldn't find it most of the time. Just like this time, Fufu was hiding in the snow. By the way, Fufu was not as afraid of Wuming as before this time. Instead, it walked to Wuming and sat down. You want to save Matthew, right? Wuming said. Fufu didn't speak, nor did it shout. It just nodded gently. Then do it. You've been in Chaldea for so long, it's time to repay Matthew's kindness. Fufu was quite puzzled. Could it be that Wuming called it out just to say this? I originally wanted to adjust Matthew's body myself, but I accidentally found you. I don't like people who don't repay kindness, so I'm going to use your ability as a beast to adjust Matthew's body. It turned out that Fufu wanted to use the energy accumulated during the time in Chaldea. Fufu agreed. Wuming waved his hand and a golden teleportation gate opened up. A mass of golden essence flew out from it. The essence instantly fused into Fufu's body. In the next second, Fufu's body began to change. Fo's head, body, and limbs swelled up as if they had grown tumors. However, as if he didn't want to turn into a beast, Fufu forcibly suppressed it. The tumor-like swelling all came to Fufu's tail. In the end, Fufu's body did not change at all. Only his tail became incomparably huge, like a burning seven-colored flame, filling the sky. Fufu glanced at Wuming, then turned around abruptly and charged towards Chaldea. Watching Fufu enter Chaldea, Wuming did not move, because he was waiting for someone. However, Wuming knew that that person would not come for a while, so he chose to walk around and enjoy the snowy scenery. Wuming did not give the system to anyone in Chaldea. After all, other than the heroic spirits, only Olga Marie, who was about to master the third law, was powerful. Matthew, Gadotsi, Roman, and the less than 20 Chaldea employees who survived did not have much combat power. Moreover, they did not need to become powerful, especially Gadotsi, Matthew, and Roman. They did not desire to become powerful. They were satisfied with being ordinary people. Wuming walked while daydreaming. About half an hour later, a man in a white coat came from Chaldea. It was Roman Ackerman. As soon as they met, Wuming asked about Matthew. "How is Matthew? Is his body okay now?" The reason why Roman came out late was naturally to check on Matthew's physical condition after being transformed by Fufu's power. Matthew's injuries are completely healed, and his cells are no longer dying. He can be said to be the same as a normal person, and his physical fitness is far better than that of an ordinary person. Roman's face was filled with joy from the bottom of his heart, and at the same time, he was relieved. After Roman asked Wuming to bypass Gydia, he gave the 10th ring of King Solomon to Wuming. As a price, Roman completely bid farewell to his identity as King Solomon. However, after that, Matthew's body began to deteriorate, which made Roman blame himself. If he still had the ring, he would have used all of King Solomon's power to save Matthew. After all, his identity had been exposed. The remaining less than 20 people in Chaldea knew Roman's true identity, so Roman did not need to hide it. However, Roman gave the 10th ring to Wuming. But now, the fourth beast, who had been hiding in Chaldea, had transformed Matthew's body at the cost of sacrificing his intelligence. Matthew would no longer be affected by the after-effects of human experimentation. Moreover, they had defeated the fourth beast in disguise. This was a good thing for all mankind. "It seems that you really like being a human, Solomon," Wuming said, turning to look at the snow. "Just call me Roman. Indeed, I like being an ordinary person. If it weren't for the sake of humanity, I wouldn't have become a doctor and entered Chaldea." Roman and Wuming stood side by side, looking into the distance. "Congratulations, your wish has been completely fulfilled," Wuming said half-jokingly. After all, Roman had completely lost the ability of King Solomon, and he was already an ordinary person. "If it's possible, I really want to quit my job in Chaldea and be a real ordinary person. I want to enjoy my life, work my life, be happy my life, and worry my life." But he could not. Chaldea was now waiting to be done. Even if it was purely for Matthew, Roman had to stay. In order to prevent human experimentation like Matthew from appearing in Chaldea again, Roman had to stay and supervise Chaldea. "I'm going to let Gydia work for me," Wuming stated his intention. "Work?" Roman was stunned. "It has destroyed many worlds. After those worlds have been reconstructed by me, I'm going to let it protect those worlds." I see." Even Roman found it slightly difficult to accept the topic of destroying and reconstructing worlds. "Also, I'm going to let Gydia inherit your power and save those worlds that are about to perish for me first." Wuming was going to let Gydia implant the system to save the world. However, the system given to Gydia was dedicated to monitoring Gydia. There would be no reward, and there would be no rejection of missions. Everything was mandatory. This was the proverb, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Although Gydia was spared, punishment was inevitable. Let it go. I believe that it will be willing to do so now. After experiencing the threat of death, Roman thought that Gydia would reflect on it. After all, it was a tactic created by Roman. Roman did not think that Gydia would be pulled down. That's it then. I'll go first. After all, Wyrm still had a lot of things to do. Don't you want to see the director? Roman suddenly said. Wyrm stopped, turned around, and glanced at Roman. She has Parmelia with her. I don't need to. I'll come and see her when she has fully mastered the third method. Opening the golden ripple, Wyrm did not stop and walked straight in. After the portal closed, Roman raised his arm. He had a communication device like Godotzi's on his arm. Director, he's gone. Chapter 1064. Wyrm returned to the route, and Callis was waiting for Wyrm on the central platform of the route. As long as Wyrm left, Callis would replace Wyrm as the temporary administrator. Master, I've confirmed all the people you've been paying special attention to. They've all been implanted with systems, so you don't have to worry about letting them meet for now. Wyrm felt a bit awkward at Callis's honest words. Wyrm coughed to hide his awkwardness. Ahem, let's begin the next part of the plan. The next part of the plan was Wyrm's plan to become a god. He had to restrict the highly developed worlds and control them as a god, so that they wouldn't self-destruct because they wanted to explore higher levels of development. My contract, my dependence, I am the place where the tributaries converge. Bind with me, heed my call, obey my command, appear. As Wyrm chanted the words of the spirit, nothing happened. Or rather, nothing happened to the root. Meanwhile, in each of the highly developed worlds, a silhouette appeared. It was a silent silhouette. Now, Wyrm's essence and abilities had transcended from before, reaching an unprecedented and indescribable height. The price was that Wyrm's eyes couldn't be changed back to their original color, and could only maintain their golden color and fiery red pupils. The 12 clones had completely broken free from the shackles of the spirit, and could activate their abilities with just a thought. Chanting the spirit was just a habit of Wyrm's. Not only that, but all of Wyrm's abilities had been strengthened like never before. The dependence of the 12 clones could create countless clones with strength comparable to the main body. Wyrm wanted to use these clones to enter the highly developed world selected by the root to restrict these worlds and prevent them from dying. Wyrm's original plan was to wait until all the worlds that were about to be destroyed were saved before activating it. However, in the end, Wyrm still chose to work on both fronts. Restricting highly developed worlds from heading towards destruction, saving worlds that were about to be destroyed from destruction, stopping all functions of the root, and focusing all efforts on controlling time in all worlds. That way, the world would no longer be destroyed, and the world dust would not enter the root and become the root's black soil. Wyrm's series of actions would no longer lead to the destruction of worlds. As long as he restricted the highly developed worlds and saved the worlds that were about to be destroyed, everything would return to the right track. The Great Origin would no longer accelerate its reincarnation due to its burdens, and the world would no longer be destroyed. The death of a world would only be a natural death because it had reached its end. In short, all that was left now was only a matter of time. After some calculations, Master only needs to send Mayu-sama to school for another 3 months, and everything will be realized. With Callis's words, Wyrm was relieved. Everything is finally settled. Wyrm lay down on the root's platform and rested. Thinking back to the time when the old man who took him in had passed away, when he obtained his own scale and headed to a mysterious world to begin this memorable journey, Wyrm was filled with endless emotions. Wyrm got to know quite a few people and came into contact with quite a few things along the way. But in the end, he still managed to return home and eliminate the trouble brought by the origin, black soil, as well as alter the origin, and prevent the destruction of a large number of worlds. This is much more interesting than before. The before Wyrm was referring to the root dragon before this reincarnation. Back then, the root dragon was like a machine that constantly carried out its mission to protect the world. Although it had visited many worlds and seen many things, it was still rather boring. After Wuming received these memories from the root, he immediately used some means to extract them and seal them away. The reason could be summed up in one word: boring. Moreover, Wuming felt that it was enough to have the memories of when he was Wuming. If he received those memories, Wuming might not be himself anymore. Or rather, it was very likely that it would revert back to being the tireless, brainless, and machine-like origin dragon that only knew how to save the world. At that thought, Wuming felt that it was great that he could become Wuming from the root dragon. At that moment, Kalas suddenly spoke, interrupting Wuming's thoughts. Master, according to the memo, you have yet to resolve the issue of Urbiruai, the Platinum Dragon King, and the nameless spellbook. At Kalas's words, Wuming abruptly jumped up from the platform. I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. Wuming swiped his hand across the void, and a virtual screen appeared. This was the current world of the underground tomb. Urbiruai was a vampire, after all, and Wuming was using the root to search for the earliest timeline of Urbiruai's era. Wuming decided to resolve Urbiruai's issue first. So it's 200 years ago. Wuming found it. Just adjust the timeline to 300 years ago. I'll go ahead and see what's going on. She had traveled through the timeline before Urbiruai was born and then hid in the dark. Wuming could not find the reason for his distrust. However, Wuming's mind suddenly lit up. He paused for a moment as if he understood something. Could it be that I actually went to that era and came into contact with that dragon while hiding in the dark? As for what Urbiruai said about Wuming being her benefactor, perhaps Wuming had gone to that world and accidentally exposed his past to Urbiruai. It seemed that he had to find another way. If that's the case, I won't go, right? I don't believe that it's because of me if I don't go. However, in the next second after Wuming said that, several figures somehow appeared on the platform of the route. Maeve, Tiamat, Athena, the young version of Guinevere, the young version of Guinevere, Lancelot, Pest, Letitia, and Shiobi. These young girls of all shapes and sizes. At first, they did not know what to do. However, they quickly reacted. Because Wuming was here. However, while they reacted, Wuming did not. Darling. Maeve jumped into Wuming's arms. Child. Child. Tiamat hugged Wuming from behind. Lord Villo. The young version of Guinevere and the young version of Guinevere hugged Wuming from both sides. Athena stood aside and watched the show. She stopped Lancelot, who wanted to help the monarch. Letitia comforted Pest, who did not get the chance. Shiobi, on the other hand, was more easily satisfied. She only needed to see Wuming, the person who changed her and made her develop feelings for him, and that was enough. Kalas? What's going on? Wuming was extremely flustered. Master, they are all existences with systems implanted in them. After they completed a mission to save the world, the reward they chose was to meet you. Therefore, the root in charge of giving out rewards directly gave them the rewards they wanted. By the way, Master, Lady Urbiruai and Lady Mayu have also come into contact with systems for some reason. Wuming could not help but look at Maeve. He felt that it was Maeve's doing. Maeve, on the other hand, chuckled and admitted it. Also, your female guards in the Godslayer world have also been implanted with systems. Kalas emphasized the word female. Wuming looked at the young version of Guinevere. The young version of Guinevere chuckled and admitted it. The young version of Guinevere is the reward that Artoria chose. Wuming's eyes started to lose focus. At that moment, Enkidu broke through space and walked out. I'm sorry, Lord Wuming. I accidentally let Mother come into contact with systems. Now, looking at the large number of young girls surrounding Wuming, Enkidu could not continue. As the saying goes, raising a cow is the same as raising two cows. It seems that one more Tiamat would not be a problem. Kalas, let's go. With a whoosh, Wuming disappeared. He went to 300 years ago, the era before Urbiruai was born. Wuming now knew why he left his mark in that world hundreds of years ago. It was because it was unavoidable. What was worth celebrating was that the world crisis had basically been resolved, and Wu Ming's ultimate goal had been achieved. However, after Wu Ming returned from that world, he had to face how he provoked these young girls. They lived in peace. This was comparable to the destruction of the world. This might be the end of one thing, the beginning of another. End. Chapter 1065. In the Hakata world, because of Wu Ming's achievement in defeating absolute evil, No Name was given the title of regional ruler by White Yiksha. Coupled with the recapture of the flag, the community was able to develop rapidly, but No Name still didn't have a name. Because it was taken away by the Demon King, if they wanted to get back the title, they had to obtain the contract to obtain the name of No Name. But this was extremely difficult. If it wasn't for someone intentionally releasing Az Dakaha, who knew when they would be able to find the flag of No Name. And there were also the members of No Name that were taken away by the Demon King. They had to all be found, which wasn't an easy task. But if it was according to 16 Knights' words, that would be, "This is interesting, isn't it?" In the No Name conference room, Ren, who had just finished analyzing the current flaws of No Name, looked at the excited 16 knights who stood up and sighed helplessly, but didn't say anything. What's interesting about it? 16 knights, San's brain is always wired differently from others. Black Rabbit couldn't help but complain. But Jiu Yuao stood on 16 knights' side. 16 knights is right. This is more challenging for this lady. Hiroi Hiroyuki, who was holding the three-furred cat, also nodded. Interesting. What's interesting about it? Miss Hiroyuki and Miss Hiroyuki are obviously just playing around. Black Rabbit was so angry that his ears jumped. Don't say that, Black Rabbit. 16 Knights smiled wantonly and looked at Black Rabbit. Villo, that guy defeated absolute evil in the final trial by himself. How can this uncle be left behind? We're not delicate flowers that need to hide behind him. If this kind of thing is always left to the Villo, wouldn't we lose face? Jiu Yuao added. So, we have to finish what even the Villo couldn't. Hiroi Hiroyuki's eyes became determined. Letitia, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help but smile. She could see that these three problem children did want to be in the limelight, but more importantly, they also wanted to take on the responsibility of the community and didn't want to let Wu Ming bear everything alone. However, they were still not strong enough. After all, the reason why Wu Ming didn't seek help from No Name when Az Dakaha was released was because they were too weak. When Wu Ming had faced Az Dakaha, who had the origin black soil, he didn't even dare to say that he had a 100% chance of winning, so how could he involve others? Otherwise, Wu Ming wouldn't have used himself as bait to entangle Az Dakaha and prevent him from wreaking havoc. Otherwise, with Az Dakaha's strength at that time, the lower levels of the box court would have been wiped out, and it would be hard to say if all the members of No Name would have survived. Then you'll have to hurry up and become stronger. Letitia smiled. At this moment, a light spot appeared above the conference room table. The light spot suddenly split into several parts and merged into everyone's body at a speed that no one could react to. 16 Knights closed her eyes and sensed the information from the light that entered her body. A few seconds later, she suddenly opened her eyes. I was still left behind by that guy. However, 16 Knights wasn't dispirited because of this. Instead, her smile was exceptionally bright. However, this is also a way to become stronger. Watch me use this Villo's thing to catch up to him. When the time comes, he'll cry. The thing that just entered the bodies of No Name was the system that Wu Ming created. And you can also become a savior. Jiu Yuasuka's eyes were shining as if she was very interested in saving the world. There are also rewards that can be obtained. Hiroi Hiroyuki pointed out the main point. This was also the way to become stronger that 16 Knights had mentioned. And you can also choose a group reward. That's great, young Master Ren. This way, our community can develop even faster. How did Mr. Villo create such a powerful gift? Black Rabbit's face was filled with joy. This reward is really. Now even finding the former members of the community and our no-name's previous names will be more convenient. Mr. Villo has really helped us a lot. Ren's face also showed an uncontrollable smile. As expected of my master. Letitia seemed to be used to her master being able to do surprising things. However, Letitia noticed that Pest, who didn't have much right to speak and didn't speak much, was now frozen in place as if he was possessed. What's wrong, Pest? Letitia curiously walked to Pest's side. Ah. I'm fine. Pest was shocked and immediately turned his back on Letitia. However, Pest didn't look like he was fine no matter how she looked at him. I'll go out first. Pest finished speaking and ran out without looking back. After that, Letitia found a few drops of tears on Pest's seat. Pest, who ran out, couldn't stop his tears from flowing. This was because in the system that Wuming gave her, there was a message from Wuming. I've already investigated. The sun entering the Little Ice Age caused the Black Death to break out. It was actually to suppress a human's final trial. As long as your strength is enough, I will definitely help you solve the human's final trial. This way, White Yiksha will have no reason to let the sun enter the Little Ice Age, and the history of the Black Death will also be changed. Moreover, this is the box court, so you don't have to worry about disappearing. Maybe at that time, I won't even have to do anything. You and your no-name companions can kill that human's final trial. So, whether it's summoning Wes and Latine or changing the birth of the Black Death, I want you to do it yourself. Through this gift that I'm giving you, work hard to become stronger, my little maid. Recalling these words, Pest's tears began to fall faster and faster, and so did his footsteps. Finally, after reaching his room, Pest couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. Wah! Letitia, who was standing outside Pest's door with her back against the wall, smiled faintly and said the same words as before. As expected of you, my master. The X-Moon world was located inside Chaldea, which was located on an iceberg in the center of the South Pole. Because of Wuming and Zelik, Chaldea managed to survive. The dozens of masters who were kept in the freezer also woke up and were sent to the hospital for treatment. Now, everyone knew that Chaldea wasn't to be trifled with. Only a few rascals dared to target Chaldea. However, even Olga Marie's Animusphia family would be able to take care of these rascals. After Olga Marie completely learned the third spell, Chaldea might become another great influence in the magician world. It also seemed to reflect Chaldea's beautiful future. During this time, the sky in Chaldea often cleared up, but this wasn't a bad thing. Gadotsi and Matthew would come out for a walk from time to time. Although it was a little cold, this peace couldn't be exchanged. Today, the two were still walking outside. By the way, Matthew, do you know that Chaldea is in the South Pole? Gadotsi suddenly asked. Matthew's little head couldn't help but tilt. The South Pole? No, Senior, I'm not very sure. After all, I haven't been out much. After all, Matthew was the product of Chaldea's human experiments. Naturally, he didn't know. Is that so? Gadotsi probably also thought of this, and felt a little lonely. Today, I learned from the doctor that Chaldea is on an iceberg in the center of the South Pole. I thought it was on the Himalayas, after all, it was the highest mountain in the world. Normal people would generally think so. Even if they didn't think so, they wouldn't have thought that Chaldea was on the snow mountain in the South Pole. I didn't think about this problem. Matthew looked up at the sky and said quietly. Actually, I'm satisfied as long as I can see the blue sky. Looking at Matthew like this, Gadotsi felt particularly distressed. At this time, Matthew suddenly coughed. Cough cough, Matthew. Gadotsi immediately supported Matthew who almost fell. A trace of blood emerged from Matthew's palm that was covering his mouth. Matthew's body had reached its limit. As a test subject of the heroic spirit possession experiment, it was a miracle that Matthew could live until now. And accompanied Gadotsi through 7 singularities. Even with the existence of Galahad's spiritual base, Matthew's body was full of holes. In other words, Matthew didn't have long to live. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.